And now the sound is all good. But so okay, yeah. So I guess we're rolling. So why don't you just introduce yourself?
Okay, first, thank you, Mike, for inviting me to the podcast. My name is Hamizah. I work for a university in Malaysia called UKM, and because it's a research university, basically what I do research on culture and business, the role of culture in how you make decisions, and how culture is like our software of our mind. Subconsciously, it directs us to do what we do, to think what we think. So to see how that affects businesses, how to see it affect society, for me that is interesting. So that's what I've been doing for quite some time. It started with immigrant entrepreneurs, a research on immigrant entrepreneurs or foreign entrepreneurs or expatriate entrepreneurs, however you see it. And then it evolved into how their different cultures affect how they do business. For instance, you can see Malays, mostly they do food business. You see Pakistani entrepreneurs, they do import-export business. For example, sometimes they do food business and it's easier for them to enter food business, especially in Malaysia, because it's almost assumed that it's halal. So here and how it affects how people make decisions in the context that they are in. So
I've been to a couple of good Pakistani restaurants in Malaysia, and they're
it's
not
good.
bad. Yeah,
It's good. Yeah. And you can see the differences between Pakistani food and also Indian food.
definitely.
They have
Yeah,
their
my
own.
place. The name of my place used to be just downstairs from my old apartment. It's called like Berryan Asif or something like that. And then they moved one to Ampang. Yeah,
Yeah.
quite good, quite good. But yeah, that you know what that makes sense. I mean, like I think for me to compare that to the United States, for example, right? Like everybody would always talk about the immigrant Chinese and how there's a Chinese restaurant in every town. No
Yeah.
matter what town you're in, there's always that one Chinese
Yes,
restaurant,
yes.
right? So that's interesting that different cultures tend to specialize in different industries depending on what country they're in. So, yeah, I mean, before we get into that, I'd like to dig deeper a little bit into you, like into your past. So, for example, I know you're a researcher at UKM, right? And what about your education experience before that? Where did you go? How did you get into it? Give me a little background of what attracted you to this position, that kind
Right.
of thing.
So my first degree is in business. I did specifically in finance in UKM, and then I studied. I realized that I was not really interested in finance so much. I find it quite dry. I don't have the heart for it, but if people in finance do, then good for them. And then I realized that I like something that is more contextual, something that is more creative, something that I can relate to myself and the society. So I studied international business when I did my masters, and then I went on to do my PhD in entrepreneurship and also with specialization in culture. So in that, culture can be quite technical. It is interesting to see how culture can be quantified. Quantified why? Because that is the only way that we can compare cultures. So between you and me, right? You're an American, I'm a Malaysian. That relatedness, that relativism can only be seen if it's quantified. Like the US, for example, the extent of individualism is high. So meaning that there's a strong push towards excellence, being better than others. It comes from a culture of immigrants. That's why.
Capitalism.
Capitalism.
Also.
Yes. That that evolves into capitalism, but that's a different story, I feel like. But for Malaysians, it's high in collectivism. So you quantify that. So that is my PhD. I relate that with decision making, entrepreneurship, and how business are being done. So it's been around 10 years since, and it is interesting to see, especially in Malaysia. Now we see a lot more foreign entrepreneurs, and they are doing exceptionally well, even better than most Malaysians. As you can see, Indonesian entrepreneurs, for example, Indonesians, they come here mostly as labour workers, men, and the women, they come here as helpers. They come here, accumulate some money. They know they couldn't stay in their jobs for a long time if they want to raise family and all that. So something better to do for them is to do business. So they have access to, what do Indonesia have? Cheap labour. They have access to products. And the good thing about Indonesians in Malaysia is it's a large market on its own. So there's this Indonesian immigrant entrepreneur that I know. You know this product called teh botol?
No.
So that is a unique, maybe you can put somewhere here, the picture here. It's uniquely Indonesian, and this one person, they have access to the supplier of teh botol.
What is it exactly?
Teh botol is tea in a bottle.
Okay.
It's really good.
Okay.
It's really good. It's just tea in a bottle, but I don't know what is good.
Okay.
Access to the supplier. Because they have access to the supplier, they have the access to good price, and they've been in Malaysia for a while, so they know people here who can facilitate the export-import process. Bring that here, sell them to a bunch of Indonesians here that would definitely buy from them because they have that mutual trust between from the fact that we came from the same place. So a market on their own. So the market grew.
That's actually an interesting point that you make. Does that mean that many of these immigrant, foreign, expat entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, do they usually start to sell a product or the business that they start within their own localized community of other immigrants? Or do they tend to try and go for a mass market, or do they start there and then grow out into a mass market?
It's a question about who they market their products to, right? It depends. For example, the Indonesian example that I gave just now, teh botol is accessible, and again, because it is Indonesian, most Malaysians assume that it's okay, this is safe for us to consume. In comparison to, let's say, somebody, an entrepreneur from Korea, for example, trying to bring some kind of ramen to Malaysia. Maybe the ramen has good ingredients, like halal ingredients, but there's no halal logo there. And the title is all Korean.
Right.
So it's harder for them to sell in comparison for the Indonesian to sell. So that's the similarity and differences in culture that can slow down and maybe increase the speed of doing business for different cultures, for different nationalities. But in terms of if the culture is similar, it's easier for them to sell.
Right. I get it. I mean, obviously, my understanding is better from an American standpoint, right? And America being a nation of immigrants. From my understanding of history, when Italians and when many of the Europeans first came to America, they would sell their products to other Italians, right? Yeah. But then eventually it spread to the wider community. Now, there wouldn't be such a large cultural divide as opposed to Korean and Malaysian in terms of the religious differences and the dietary differences. But maybe there was with the Italians and the Jewish people, for example, right? Because it wouldn't be kosher, so they wouldn't be able to eat that kind of food. So it didn't penetrate that community. But yeah, so maybe, and eventually, as we know, pizza, for example, which was originally intended for only the Italian immigrant migrant workers, then spread to the whole country, right? And essentially became a help facilitate a more multicultural country, which is one of the benefits, I think, of immigrants doing business in countries. I mean, not only do they assimilate to many of the cultural aspects of the country that they're doing business in, but some of their culture also rubs off onto the existing country in which they're in. I think one of the best examples of that is probably Indonesia, right? Where the Chinese diaspora, when it came to Indonesia, they assimilated to a point where they actually took Indonesian names.
Yes.
And therefore adapted many of Indonesian cultures within their own culture. But I think at the same time, Indonesia also adapted some of the Chinese aspects that they brought with them.
So the more important context is the nation itself, because there's a strong role of the government that dictates what you can do, what you cannot do. This is permissible, this is not permissible, this is allowed, this is not allowed. So Chinese Indonesians might be different than Chinese Malaysians or Malaysian Chinese. Singaporean Chinese would be different, but if you put it in a context like that, they are still Chinese, but again, Chinese, in terms of nationality, it will moderate how they do things, how they make decisions. Even their language could be different. There are Chinese who can't speak the language even, right? So the national context shapes how they do things as well. Schooling system also dictates by the government, right? So it shapes the business environment as well.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the business side, because that's like one of the things that you really focus on, right? I think, a lot of immigrants do start with small businesses,
right.
and small businesses are kind of a driver of the economy, right? Now, is there one thing that I think made America so great, was that these small businesses were able to help drive the economy. And then, for these people who are essentially helping grow the country, the next step you would think would be some sort of a path to citizenship, which is very nice. Because then you could integrate these A players who really helped, stimulate the economy of the country and then continue to make the country stronger. Do you ever see anything like that happening in Malaysia? Because I know now it's very difficult to get a Malaysian citizenship, right?
I heard that, Well, I can't say if it's going to help to get citizenship or not, but I do see how it generates the economy, it generates small businesses. For example, first it starts with foreign direct investment. Let's say there's a very large Korean company investing into Malaysia, maybe somewhere in Johor Bahru, because it's near to Singapore. So this one company, and then they will hire mostly Koreans as their top management, and then they bring their wife and kids. The kids, they go to school, they go to the local school, so they learn local culture. So that's one part. And the wife, they start a small catering business, selling Korean food in the canteen. So local factory workers get to have some home cooked Korean food, and she gets to make some money, and then it eventually evolved into a bigger business. And people actually benefit from it, not just locals, foreigners as well. But the process is quite slow, yet it is significant because you can see differences in from one generation to another. Like right now, most immigrants, especially in Malaysia, I'm not saying in terms of Malaysian and Chinese because they are Malaysians. The Indonesians, the Koreans, they are reaching their second generation here. The Indonesians are especially maybe third to fourth.
Now, do these immigrants usually do they marry into Malaysian? Do they marry a Malaysian so that way they can raise a second generation here
Some of them,
and integrate into the country?
Yeah, because not sure if it's a strategy or not. It's really
no, I don't think it's strategic. I think it's just love.
Love is love. Love is love. But
I mean, you're looking at one.
Yeah, love is love, right?
Right.
But basically, it does help. And if you if you adopt or being adopted in a country long enough, you feel more at ease with that country than your motherland somehow. It happens to some people.
Yeah, I've heard that. You know, when you've been overseas long enough and you know that you've become a true international citizen when you come back to your home country and you feel like a tourist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that?
I've heard that colloquialism. No, I don't feel like a tourist, but I certainly don't have the same perspective as many Americans. I think my perspective is very international from a global standpoint,
Right.
And I've been able to see things very differently. Right? I'll give you an example of that. When I first came to Malaysia, I love movies. I've made a couple of movies,
Right.
and I remember going to a film, and there was a scene at the mosque, and I thought to myself, why is there always a scene at the mosque, right? And then I remember after being here a little while longer, I went and watched a Hollywood film. Particularly the film that I watched was Rocky, a film from 1979, right? An old classic American film. And before the final scene, Rocky goes to the church and he sees his preacher. And then I started thinking, wow, there are a lot of church scenes in Hollywood films. But you'd never think that. You'd never think about that being an American because you're just used to it. The same way that a Malaysian or would be used to just seeing a mosque scene, right? And I would have never thought of that had I not been outside of the United States, that there's this, really this religious tie-in with entertainment, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Buddhism, whatever, right? And I would have never seen that had I not lived overseas, particularly in a Muslim country for so many years. So that was just one thing that I think dawned on me in terms of being able to see things from a different perspective. But for you, I think your work is really interesting, and I want to show people, your book. This is her book, Ethnic Migrant Entrepreneurs in Malaysia. It was printed by UKM. And, that's why we're talking, because I myself have experience doing business in Malaysia. And I think one of the challenges, if you were to ask, would be definitely trying to figure out the cultural preferences, right? So, as you know, and
there's no black and white of it. There's no manual.
Exactly. There's no manual. And for me, one of the biggest challenges was actually working not with Malaysians, but working with other immigrants in Malaysia who came here to work, particularly Bangladeshi or Pakistani workers, because many of these people are coming here to make a living, and they're coming here because the situation that they were in previously in their home country was not a situation of opportunity. And from being in that scenario to being in a high-end restaurant or a service position, there's a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of, for them, I would say there's a lot that needs to be learned, right? So, and not only that, but just also communication and the nuances of communication. And that particularly was a challenge. But you overcome these challenges. You try to figure it out. And we ended up, owning 7 restaurants and having 20 virtual kitchens of Mikey's New York Pizza
that's big, yeah.
and NY Burger Co. And then we sold the company in 2022 after COVID. But yeah, so I get it. I know the challenges, but also it's not only that; it's the challenges in the consumer market, right? So depending on the product, I think for people coming from maybe, like you said, Indonesia, Pakistan, they have inherent advantages in cultural similarities, right? But there are also similarities for like Koreans and for Americans, for example, in the Hollywood culture that gets pushed all over the world. So, Malaysians are very familiar with pizza and burgers and steaks. And now with the huge Korean K-pop push that's, going all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Korean food has gotten so much more popular here ever since this whole Korean wave of entertainment has taken over through Netflix. Even for myself, I've been going to get more Korean food, and it can be halal, right? And our restaurants, while not halal certified, they didn't serve pork, right? And all of our workers were pretty much Muslim.
Yeah.
So that I would like to see. I would like to see, at least when I was in the business, the path to getting a halal certificate I found a little bit bureaucratic. I don't know if it's changed. Hopefully it has, to make it a little bit easier for entrepreneurs to get it.
It is stringent. It is time consuming.
Yeah.
But once you get the halal certification, it makes everything easy. So it is worth it. As previous restaurant owner, I think you know how beneficial it is, but also how stringent and how it is bureaucratic, because it is a certification that is so useful and so valuable. It brings in a lot of business. So,
I would say particularly outside of KL, particularly when you're getting outside of the major cities, it's more valuable.
Yeah.
Terengganu, Pahang,
some states are more conservative.
Yes, more conservative communities. It holds its weight a lot more, for sure.
But the problem with that is it gives more way for illegal halal certification. So that is a problem, and I'm not the right person to talk about it. But in general, whatever that is stringent, whatever that is super bureaucratic, it gives way for illegal or maybe grey activities that is kind of illegal, kind of not ethical, kind of not, but people still do. So
didn't something like that? There's kind of a hot topic. Something like that happened a few weeks ago. I think I saw in the news where there was some halal certificate scandal or controversy. I don't know. I just breezed through it, but I did see something, a restaurant. I'm not sure what it was.
I apologize. I'm not aware of it that much.
Me neither.
But basically, that because it's valuable, it is a certification.
Right.
So it is quite worrying for I'm a normal consumer as a consumer to see. But because the situation is, a lot of people are very particular about halal certification, and the certification and the logo is so important for them, which is understandable. But I personally, I'll take it with a grain of salt, because you can see the ingredient list, and basically if you aren't sure, then don't do it, then don't buy it, don't consume it. So
what is your current research doing? So I know you wrote the book, and now what's the current research you're working on?
Oh, my research is quite different from migrant entrepreneurs. It's still under entrepreneurship. I love that question. It's still under entrepreneurship topics, but it's more about doing business in emerging markets. So Malaysia is an example of emerging markets. What is emerging markets? These are markets that countries that move past under the underdeveloping stage. It's not third world. I don't think it is a good term to use right now. is in the middle, moving towards developed country status. So the uniqueness of emerging market is because it's moving towards the developed market stage. So there are still parts of the society that is quite left behind. A large middle income earners, which is good. They will move towards high income earners. But at the same time, that is in terms of market side of things. But there's infrastructure divide. And this is more glaring in Borneo, Sabah, Sarawak. Such large, rich states, but infrastructure divide, technological divide. There's also financial and income divide among the society, but so much potential. Emerging markets in general are like that. Other emerging markets in Asia, Vietnam, we have Indonesia, large middle income, Thailand. Those are our peers, Malaysian peers. So the research is on how to do business, doing business in emerging markets. So right now, I'm focusing on one specific sector, which is agriculture. So we Malaysia can still rely on agriculture because we still have much to do with our land. Our oil is depleting, so we cannot rely on them so much. But in terms of agriculture, yes, the soils are good, especially, like I said, especially in Borneo. The soil is good, the land is large, and there are people who are willing to do hard work for it, and there are demand. So last week I was in Miri, right?
Which was built on oil.
Built on oil.
Yeah.
Depleting oil. But that shapes the whole business activities there. So Miri, nearby Brunei, there's this large jackfruit farm. 9,000 trees, and one tree produces 4 to 5 big jackfruits.
And jackfruits, if people don't know, are huge. How heavy can jackfruits be? They could be like 10 kgs. They're enormous.
Mike, 31 kilos.
31 kilo jackfruits.
Yes.
Yeah, by the way, I love jackfruit. I love jackfruit.
You cannot finish that big
No
jackfruit
That's
in
like
one
a party.
sitting.
Yeah.
So.
And one way is that they're using it. One way is that jackfruits are being utilized in the United States, at least I know, is as a vegetarian or a vegan meat. Right.
That is such a good idea. So that's the idea that I give to the farmer. But anyway,
I made a pizza. I made a jackfruit pizza once in Mikey's. Yeah, we did. We made a jackfruit pizza to make it because it almost the way they smoke it, you can smoke it and cook it in a certain way that it has a smoky bacon-like flavor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, essentially.
So how about what about the texture?
The texture is nice because it has a nice snap to it.
Meaty, right?
Yeah, it's fleshy. It's very fleshy, very meaty. But if you cook it correctly, it also has a very nice snap to it when you bite into it. So it's good use in tacos. Jackfruit tacos are very good. I've seen people supplement it for pork. Instead of a pulled pork sandwich, they make a barbecued pulled jackfruit sandwich. Very good. Yeah.
Market for it, yes. So 9,000 trees, one tree produces 4 to 5 very, very large jackfruit. But the problem is because Miri is in the middle, and then there's already a demand. China, Singapore. But the transportation from Miri to these places, and jackfruit is only good for 2 to 3 days. So if you want to sell to these countries, of course, price still plays an important part. So if you want to transport it through air, it will increase the price a bit. Maybe price increase, lower down the attractiveness of the product as well. Then of course you do not want to buy the whole jackfruit. You don't go to supermarket. I feel like buying one big jackfruit today. Never.
You won't be able to carry it home.
No. And then who's going to eat it? Right. So they prepackage it, so that is a added cost as well, and will take some more time, and will reduce the time for freshness for the jackfruit. So that's the challenge in terms of infrastructure, logistics, infrastructure. So that's the challenge for them. Potential is there, demand is there. What is in between here is the gap in infrastructure. So that's a challenge.
That's interesting. I mean, maybe, you could shed some light on this too, but I would say that kind of equivocates to the durian market, right? Like Malaysia, I mean, for people who don't know, durian is the king of all fruits. It might have a very strong odor, but it's very good. And in recent years, I started to like durian more and more.
Oh no.
Yeah, Musang King, Black Swan, I think. Black Swan, right? Is that one? What's it called? The
Blackthorn.
Blackthorn, right?
Yeah.
Blackthorn and Musang King, those are my favorite.
Yeah.
Blackthorn. But right, huge demand for durian in China, right?
China market, yes.
China, and they will pay for it, and they were buying all the best fruits, and then but then what happened after so many years? They figured out a way to grow durian in China. So then it started bringing demand a little bit down. So that's something that would also be a challenge in terms of the Chinese market, I think, maybe with jackfruit as well.
That's the risk I think everybody is taking with the Chinese market. Whatever that you sell to the Chinese market, if you sell clothing, next day something comes out similar to whatever that you're doing. If you export the technology, because they are so adaptable and they have the technology to adapt, not just in manufacturing. They hold the power in manufacturing. But in terms of agriculture also,
I think so. But there's a bit longer of a leash with agriculture, because it takes them a bit more time to adapt, because they have to get the soil ready, they have to get the fields ready to make sure the climate is correct. Right, there's a lot of variables. So that one you have a bit longer of a leash, maybe a couple of seasons before they start to adapt, if that really takes on the market. But then other products in Borneo, right? Obviously, we got to talk about palm oil. I mean, that's the biggest agricultural product in Southeast Asia. Between Indonesia and Malaysia are the two biggest producers of palm oil globally.
Yeah.
And now I know South America is starting to become a palm oil producer as well. They're cutting down the rainforest for it. Is that something that you looked into at all? Or
palm oil, not so much. But coming back to doing business in emerging markets, because whatever that makes money, that's what people will be doing. At one point of time, it was palm oil. Palm oil price is still good, I feel like, but they are facing a lot of backlash, I think. The reputation is not so good.
Particularly in Europe.
Yeah.
America still puts palm oil in just about everything, but Europe put a lot of regulations on it.
Yeah, but I feel like, the US is putting a lot of soft power on it.
Well, they're starting to, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now in the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again.
So they experience some challenge in terms of competition. Corn oil. US wants to push their corn oil, and Europeans they have their own crops that they want to sell, but reputation is not so good. But the price is good. So that's for palm oil.
Sarawak, from what I remember during my times of macroeconomic studying in Malaysia, Sarawak pepper is a very big agricultural product there, right? I remember I took a tour to one of the pepper fields, and I got to pick the pepper right off the tree and eat it.
But you know how that is interesting to see, that you have one area that specializes in one thing and another area that specializes in one thing, and then when you go deeper and you go into that area, you realize that actually it is shaped by the economic activities in that area. For example, pineapple, the type of soil that that pineapple uses. I'm not an agronomist, so I can only talk as in layman terms with regards to it. If you see palm oil, you see pineapple.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why you see a lot of palm oil and pineapple in Johor.
Oh.
So it shapes a lot of the business activities there, but it also shapes it is also being shaped by the people around there as well. In Sarawak, there's this rumah panjang culture. So one of the entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, when they first started the farm, the orang-orang kampung, the village people actually helped her to build the rebai.
Oh, a chicken coop.
Chicken coop, yes, chicken coop. The chicken coop was being built by the village people there. And the land is owned by her parents. So it's a heritage kind of ancestry kind of land, which shapes a lot of businesses in Sarawak. But basically, it's a lot of potential with a lot of gaps. That is something that I'm trying to look at the moment.
So are you trying, because in emerging economies, you know, I think it depends on which economy you're looking at, but there's certainly almost two aspects to that economy. There's one that's very high income earning, and then there's a large wealth gap, and you have low income learners. And there can be middle classes, particularly in those that are closer and closer to, you know, fully developed economies. But what kind of solution do you think there are for these emerging economies to make that leap from emerging to fully developed?
In my knowledge, it's really a change in mentality, a change in how we do things. Korea, for example, they evolved from emerging markets to a highly developed economy in such a short time. So here they have, in their case, it's a systematic working between the government and the society and the business context as well. Samsung, for example, they grow together with the government, right? So they work together. They become such a large company. The government of Korea especially has become such a developed country. Not just Samsung, actually a lot of conglomerates there. So that is also one of the shaping aspects of emerging markets. In Malaysia, we have a bunch of conglomerates as well. They also grow together with the government and with the country. But the development speed of Korea is not the same like Malaysia. Also, I feel like Vietnam is speeding towards past emerging market stage, because there's a strong. They work together. The businesses and the government, they work together.
They do.
They benefit from each other, I feel like.
They do, but I have to say, I was just in Vietnam more than I'd ever been in my life. I was there 3 times in the last few months, and they still have a long way to go.
Really?
I think Malaysia's way further along than Vietnam, if you ask me, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of law, just you know, law-abiding citizens, in terms of, I would say, in terms of waste management.
Waste management.
Yeah, and in terms of development, there was a lot of undeveloped land in prime locations. I was in Da Nang. There were tons of prime land undeveloped, whereas I think Malaysia is very well developed, and I think Malaysia probably has the best infrastructure in the region when it comes to roads.
Right.
Malaysia is probably one of the biggest kept secrets in the world. Highest value for money in the world. Great infrastructure, great food, a mix of cultures and people. So it is a hidden secret. I guess we don't want to let it out too much, but yeah. I mean, there is, like you said, like in Borneo particularly, you know, there's a gaps in certain places. I think Malaysia is quite close though to being almost a fully developed country, because the major cities, Penang, Johor, KL, they're all quite developed, right? But Borneo does need some. Kuching is a fantastic city.
Yeah.
I love Kuching. I lived there for 6 weeks back in '09, and very much enjoyed my time there. I wrote a fiction book. I don't know if I told you this. I wrote a fiction book last year. I'm in talks with publishers now to get it published.
Oh, okay.
And about 25% of that book takes place in Borneo, with the Iban tribe there. Because I spent, I made my movie, The Borneo Incident, and I spent quite a bit of time with the Iban tribe. So I think it's really fascinating culture.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
Something that, because they are so intertwined spiritually, with the land, with the place, it does something to in how they do things somehow. I don't know. I'm not the best person to talk about it, but I could see that. So that is also an aspect of emerging market. It's so culturally intertwined. So
yeah, and maybe some of that has kind of let them fall behind a bit in terms of economic value, because I think maybe they don't value the same things that an economy values, right? That like a capitalist economy values. They kind of live communally in a longhouse. Very much collectivism. It's different, and that's fine. That's fine. Not everybody has to be rich and have a big house and big cars, because that doesn't make everybody happy.
But if you are economically viable, the long houses will look much nicer. So you still can practice your culture. It's not going to be left behind. It's just going to be a bit elevated, so your children, your grandchildren get to live more comfortably. They have more resources to be better, more resources for the family and the society to be better economically, I feel like, because government subsidies won't be here for forever.
Yeah.
Right? So especially in emerging markets like Malaysia, it's important for us to not be reliant on them.
Well, I think the
so much.
basis of that it probably starts at education as well. It's
Exactly,
really important, education, and nowadays, right? I think the education genre is changing very rapidly, right? Whereas before, you needed to go to a classroom and sit in front of a teacher, and they would teach you step by step. But now I think education is more about connectivity and having access to the internet, because you can learn anything from YouTube. You can learn anything from the internet. I mean, MIT and Harvard have free online classes on the internet that you could take, right? So if somehow we could implement, I mean, we know Malaysia now has access to Starlink. So Starlink can connect the most remote places in the country. If we could get Starlink to some of these communities, and start implementing online courses and online regimens, that could really help educate some of these communities that have kind of been left behind or
Do
something.
they want to learn or not?
That's another question.
That's
Do they
another
want
question.
to? Right. Do they have?
Access is one. The desire is also another thing. But how do you know if you want it or not if you are not exposed to it?
Correct.
Right? So in that regard, yes, access is important. So
because then everybody has the same opportunity, right? If you have access, I mean, there's this kind of a funny meme though that happened like a couple of months ago, where Starlink was given to some tribes in the Amazon, and apparently some of the men got addicted to porn, and all they did was watch porno all day, and nobody learned anything, and that obviously
what you do with the access,
right? What you do with the access, right? And you won't have that trouble here in Malaysia because those sites are all banned, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
As far as I know.
So basically, yes, access and the desire to, make yourself better, to better your family, to better yourself. Change in mentality is important, but it will happen, but maybe a bit slow, but it will happen eventually. Yes.
I think it'll speed up because now
Gen Z is so unique.
exactly they learn so fast. I
Yeah.
mean, my son, I have a 6-year-old son, and he's able to accumulate knowledge at a rate that took me 20 years to accumulate growing up, right? Like by the time he was 4 years old, he knew every single car brand
Really?
out there. You know, I mean, I didn't know what half these car brands were growing up you know, back pre-internet because you just didn't have access to it, right?
They even learn coding in schools now.
Yeah. Which they may not need to learn because AI is probably going to take over that.
Yeah,
And
AI is one.
so that's one of the scary things, right? Once AI really starts getting implemented and the desire to learn may not be there for more people because they may not need to learn because AI can do all of those tasks.
Can we talk about AI though? Like,
Sure.
For example, the last few weeks were our week 13 and 14 in the university. So week 13 and 14 is the weeks where presentations happen, students submit their assignment. I look into their assignment, I know this is a ChatGPT material because there's no way, I mean, I have faith in my students, yes, but this is just too good to come from a 19-year-old, a bunch of 19-year-old students. So how do I know that? I ask them questions in the presentation and just basic questions about the topic that they choose. I let them choose their topic. But I ask them one question and they have the need, 4 of them, they needed to Google it. So that is a concern for me because of course your work looks really, really good on paper, really, really good in email, but when you start interacting, then that's it.
Correct. I had the same issue, and I was so struck by this issue
Yeah.
that I made a YouTube video about it.
Yeah.
Link in the description. But no, because I was interviewing people for a job, and I realized that I am not interacting with people. I'm interacting with their AI proxies. And it was just too clean, too polished,
Too perfect.
too perfect. It wasn't a real person, and I could tell that immediately. So now that you just mentioned something, and it sparked an idea to me, right? Because we're thinking, how can we solve these problems, right? You know what? I think the solution for this is going to have to be oral exams. That is how you know somebody really knows the topic that they're discussing, the material, an oral exam. And it's fascinating. Like, did you ever read the book Dune, by any chance? You see the movie Dune? Frank Herbert. It's like that sci-fi movie.
Oh yeah, Dune. Okay.
Dune,
yeah.
right? Well, in Dune, it's a post-AI society. So because in the end AI got rogue and they had a war with AI, right? But the point is that they banned all artificial intelligence, and what it did was it made you use more of your brain because you couldn't rely on the technology anymore. And I think that's like that famous, that famous Einstein quote where our technology has surpassed our humanity. And that's a dangerous thing because now our technology is surpassing us at such a rapid rate that we can't keep up. And that is, that's a scary thing because what's going to happen? At what point do we stop becoming the tool makers and start becoming the tools ourselves for AI?
Somehow we do that subconsciously. For instance, when you park anywhere, Malaysia has got a lot of malls, right? So you park in some malls. The first instinct, the first reflex is to take picture of your parking spot. So in a way, you're training yourself not to rely on your brain. So,
and what happens? It's just like any other organ, any other muscle. The less you use it, the weaker it gets.
Yes. So you want to take picture of it just in case. But because the picture is in your phone, then never mind lah. Can look into it later lah. But that is one basic task. What if there's a big decision that you need to do? Like one big investment that you need to do, like if you are a director or a manager for a firm and the decision for you to buy or sell a certain asset is based on your cognition and based on your intuition. You don't have that anymore because you can ask ChatGPT, should I buy this or not? Should I sell this or not? So
you're taking the decision maker power away from yourself.
So we are actually training ourselves. I feel like we are training ourselves to be so reliant on technology so much. Technology can be helpful, but if we are relying on them so much, especially with regards to decision making, we are changing our own society as a whole. So
yeah, I asked the question, is it evolution or is it de-evolution?
Yeah.
Are we devolving? You know, and at some point, I mean, they're talking about merging with technology. Instead of having a phone, which is essentially an extension of yourself, maybe they want to put a chip in your mind or something like that, right?
No.
And then all of a sudden you're just taken over by the AI and you become a bot, essentially. I mean, they already say that there's NPCs, right? You know, non-player characters in the video game. But it's a scary path to go down, and I fear that we're so far along this path that there's no way to get off it. The hope that I do have is that we accept the fact that AI is better at doing intellectual and logical thinking for us. However, we take that free time that we have from using our brain to do that, to use our brain to get to a more instinctual, spiritual, religious side and look within ourselves, right? Whether, I don't think it matters what religion you are. You can look, you know, deeper in no matter what.
Right.
They all have basic cores that they share. And you can look deeper within ourselves, you know, and maybe maybe that's a way for us to evolve spiritually, you know, rather than, or morally for that matter, right? Maybe that makes you a better person, right? Rather than, you know, having to rely on AI, because that's the one thing that AI cannot take away from us. You know, once humanoid robotics come out, it'll be able to do physical labor. It'll be able to do menial tasks. It'll be able to, you know, do the dishes, watch the laundry. You know, maybe 10 years out, right? But the one thing it can't take away from us is our morality and our spirituality and
instincts
and our instincts.
Yeah,
right.
Because that is generational. It's deep within you. You won't be able to program it. So I remember a meme somewhere that I saw. I use AI for me to be able to so that I can have time to do my writing, do my art. Because the AI is helping me out with the dishes, the AI is helping me out with cleaning, doing menial stuff. But right now, I am doing the cleaning, I am doing the dishes because AI is doing my writing, is doing my art. So maybe I feel like we abuse AI also as well. It's our fault. I can empathize with my students, for example. They are taking 8 to 9 subjects per semester. So 8 to 9
That's
assignments. Maximum assignments that they need to submit. So we've been students. We've been 19. You've been 19. I've been 19. I know how distracting it is. It is even more distracting right now because there's so many things to do, so many other interesting things to see. So you get distracted. Time management very bad. We've been there. So you go to ChatGPT, you go to whatever AI tool there is out there, and then started answering. I don't think they AI is doing their assignment. Starting to rely on AI for their assignment, answering the questions for them. So what?
Sorry.
Yeah. So what we want as educators from the students, from the process of doing assignment, is actually teamwork, the ability to lead and to be led, the ability to communicate between and among different people, different backgrounds, because maybe where you come from, you don't talk to men. Where you come from, you don't talk to women. You don't talk to older people or younger people. This is the time where you can actually be around different people and develop your emotional intelligence, right? But now you do this, you do that, okay lah, compile, and then the output is there, but the process is not being satisfied. And what happens next after they graduate is, what I feel is students who graduates who cannot communicate, who cannot lead people or be led, and so comfortable being in their own bubble. You cannot to be able to be part of society and to earn a living. You cannot be in a room on your own and with your AI. Cannot. So that is something that is quite worrying for me with regards to AI and education.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think that one of the compounding factors of that is going to be social media.
Yeah.
Because kids being online all day, yes, they're being social, but they're not being face-to-face social. They're commenting on posts, they're text messaging, they're SMS, WhatsApping, right? But they're not actually speaking with people.
Yes.
And that hurts the social interaction, right? This new generation of kids, they're so comfortable with that. And you know, you go to a restaurant and all four people are on the phone, and who knows, maybe they're even messaging each other, which is very possible. You know, but
that's not nice to see, right?
No, because being in a restaurant, the whole point is to be social and have conversations. And not only that, going back to AI, these AI-driven algorithms are what are keeping them in these echo chambers, right? And these echo chambers are reinforcing.
Echo chambers, okay.
Yeah, these echo chambers are reinforcing these thoughts that they have, and they're not able to see outside perspectives. This is what essentially led to the entire woke movement and the right to free speech being questioned in the United States, because these younger people aren't used to having educational debates with one another, or having a conversation where people have differing opinions, because they're online all day hearing the same opinions over and over again, that they can't accept that there are other people out there who have different opinions, or you know, are just seeing subject matter from a different perspective, and they're essentially becoming closed-minded, which hopefully, you know, will change with some of the new policies that are happening in the United States. I mean, I think that here in Malaysia, for example, it hasn't been affected as much. Like, there is way less wokeness here in Malaysia than there is in Europe and the United States, right? And that's a good thing, but it still doesn't mention the fact that kids are online here more or just as much over there. I like the policy that Australia put into place, where kids are not allowed on social media until they're 16 years old. I think
that's a good policy, yeah.
That's a good policy. And maybe we'll see more of that. I don't know.
It's concerning, and I like your point that it's actually self-fulfilling. Whatever that, because the algorithm has no sentiment of saying, okay, this is wrong, don't do this. Don't do this. This is right, continue doing this. Basically, they just pushing more content that they think that we like.
Right.
So we actually have to have more self-control, but we are mindlessly scrolling. That is,
I mean, it just reinforces your own opinion. It doesn't allow you to see other perspectives. And it's strange, right? Because now we're living in a world, whereas before there was a unified message, right? And there's something dangerous in that as well, because then it can be controlled by an overarching power, right?
Yes.
But now everybody is living in their own worlds, right? Everyone's living in their own algorithms. And I've noticed that. I've questioned it before, because sometimes you'll meet somebody new, let's say, and you guys start hitting it off. Bang, bang, bang. You're touching all these subjects. You have the same opinion. You're like, wow, this is great. Then you step back and you realize, wait a second, I think we're on the same algorithm, right? Then there's somebody else that you meet, and they have no idea about the stuff you're talking about. Like, you can mention things that are huge in your timeline, like whatever kind of political news, geopolitical news, or whether it's about UFOs or whatever, anything. and they don't know anything about it. They're like, really? I know nothing about it. Now that doesn't mean that you don't get along with them. It just means that they're getting they're living in an entirely different information feed.
Their reality is different.
Exactly.
But we are in the same room. Like maybe your timeline, your FYP, TikTok term. Your FYP is different. My FYP is different. So, but we are in the same room.
Yeah.
But good that we have this kind of interaction. We are speaking to each other, but not many people are doing that.
Exactly. That's why conversations like these are so important, because then that gives us a chance to share information from different realms and different perspectives, right? And that's how we grow ultimately as a society.
Yeah, understanding that this person is different, but different is not bad.
Right.
It's just different. And this person, we are similar to this person, but maybe we don't get along that well, and that is fine. So the experience of being human is actually being hindered by our reliance on technology so much from what I see.
And it's sharing. The experience of being human is sharing with each other, right? That's how we were able to grow. And when people become so attached to their ideals and their thoughts, and then another group that's when you get wars. That's when you get conflicts.
You know what's funny? The role of technology is actually to get different people together, but actually it's dividing people more than ever.
Yeah, what it's doing is it's getting smaller groups of people together and dividing them into larger groups, right?
So that is quite mind-boggling for me. So that is with regards to technology and AI, which is I find quite, like, for instance, when I first got into TikTok, right, it was 2021.
Oh yeah, tell us about that experience, because this is a fascinating story.
Yeah, TikTok 2021, and then when I first logged into the account, the FYP or For You page is full of dancing teenagers, and I was wondering why. Because
To be clear, you did this as an experiment, right?
Experiment.
Right. This was part of your research.
I just want. This is not part of my research, but I just want to see. It's good to learn new things. It's good to learn new app. That is in my mind at the time. So when I got into TikTok, a bunch of dancing teenagers, and when I learned more about TikTok algorithm, because I was invited as one of the TikTok educators at the time, so I learned more about algorithm during that time. So apparently the algorithm, so this will be on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who's good, who is expert in IT and algorithm, please explain, because where I'm at, and please correct me, because where I was at the moment, the people who has TikTok, that is what they like, dancing teenagers.
Right.
I find it quite disturbing. These are the people that I'm living with. So eventually, dancing teenagers and cats.
Bizarre. I know.
But everybody,
This is why, like, in America, they banned TikTok, because they thought that it was a psyop from China, right? Because in TikTok's a Chinese company.
Yeah.
And in China, the algorithm pushes educational topics. So the people that trend are like science teachers doing experiments, language, different multicultural stuff, educational stuff. Whereas in the US, the algorithm is pushing, these silly dances and these challenges, like,
really?
But look, I don't think that was ever really proven. I think it's exactly what you said. It's what the people liked in the United States. I think in the United States it was more of a free algorithm, but in China it was curated. It was certainly curated to be more educational.
That is what I suspect.
But frankly, that's smart. I mean, because let's face it, we all lose time on the internet sometimes. I've found myself, looking up from my phone after 20 minutes and wondering where I was and how I got onto this app, because you get enthralled in this dopamine hits of reels, shorts, and TikToks. And I'm guilty of it, just like most people are, but you have to somehow figure out a way to control it.
Yeah.
I mean, the scary thing about it is I'm trying to, I have children, right? So I'm trying to teach my kids about it. Like when they were making these apps back in the day, and because it's based on capitalism and it's based on stickiness and now it's all about information and selling data. But when they were making these apps, they were making these apps in conjunction with like Stanford psychiatrists and psychologists to figure out the way the limbic system in the brain works so that they can create the movement in the app that makes it as sticky to you and as these dopamine hits as possible, so that that you're on it more. And essentially it's weird, but it is a digital drug. It's the same way that nicotine is a physical chemical drug. This is a digital drug. It's been manipulated to become a digital drug, which I wouldn't be opposed to having some sort of limitations on certain aspects of social media, particularly for younger kids. Not for adults. Adults should be free to do what they want.
But that's where self-control is important.
Yes,
so it's
correct.
Because it's just so easy to be scrolling for hours, and you see what you like, and then whatever social media that you're on, they will show you more of whatever that you like. You like gossip, you get more gossip. So basically,
and it's mindless because you're just swiping your thumb.
Brain rot.
Right, brain rot. Right. They say there's brain rot millionaires out there from these kids that just have brain rot channels. And basically a digital drug dealer,
But it is a good tool if you want to educate, if you want to change people's minds. So the way people use somebody up there who's controlling the algorithm, who's administering the content, I suspect that most social media companies, they have their own social media managers and social media, I would say, coordinators and content managers. I feel like, because not everybody is allowed to have free speech. I feel like if everybody is allowed to say anything that they want, then it would be quite dangerous for the society, I think. So,
well, America was based on free speech, so it's hard for me to debate that one. Yeah. I mean, I would say I am a free speech advocate 100%, and I know that not every society has the same freedoms that the United States has when it comes to free speech. There are some limitations on it, if there are inciting a riot or the famous screaming fire in a movie theater example.
Or for example, I'm not going to any propaganda ideas, but maybe if you want to sell a new religion, for example, it could be dangerous. Selling a new idea, bad idea, for example, like it could be dangerous as well.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
You're not
I'm not opposed to new religions,
okay.
Because at the end of the day, all religions started out as a small following, right? I mean, they all had to start somewhere.
No religion, cult.
Cult, right?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's true. But technically, a cult is just a startup religion.
Startup religion. Okay, good point.
But the ones that survive, they become the conglomerates.
But cults can be manipulated.
Agree.
Most cult leaders are manipulative, right?
Yes.
So that is something that you want to hold back for a bit.
Yeah.
That's where I stand in terms of free speech.
I mean, I can't disagree and that's why most cults end up fizzling out, because I think usually what happens is it's an exercise in whoever's the leader of the cult, and they usually just get power hungry and they end up having sex with their flock, or they end up being corrupt and they end up getting arrested, or
abuse of power.
Something, right, exactly, abuse of power. And maybe that's why the great religions survived the way they did, because they had such dynamic, leaders at the very beginning who were moral.
Yeah. But basically, social media algorithm can be abused. That's where self-control comes in. That's where your humanness need to be first. Your morality that you mentioned.
Yes.
It needs to come first, because people are in general, they want to follow something, they want to believe something. So to abuse that is quite
It's
bad.
dangerous. It is dangerous. I agree. It's dangerous. You have to be careful. And I think, but that's an individual standpoint. I think as an individual, you have to be careful. You have to make your own decisions, right? And try to think for yourself as much as you can
AI
in
is
life.
slowing us down with regards to that.
What is?
AI.
Oh, yeah. Thinking for yourself.
Yeah. I saw somewhere, what should I eat for lunch? Like,
Right.
AI can decide that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to tell you. It'll give you a lot of options, and it's funny. That's what Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google, I saw a interview with him like 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, what we're seeing in Google now is people asking, what movie should I see? What should I do tonight?
They don't want to think.
Right. They don't want to think. And that's sad. But people are lazy, right? And that's why most people, this is, going to be a little controversial, but that's why most people are employees, because an employee is a security net. You don't have to really think for yourself to survive. You get a monthly paycheck. Whereas an entrepreneur must use their mind. They have to. They're surviving on their wits.
Yes.
And that's why entrepreneurs, I guess, ultimately get the ultimate payday when they run the company, because they took the risk.
Yep.
They took the risk in surviving and having confidence in
That's
themselves.
the reward of taking
That's
the
the
risk.
reward.
Yeah.
Correct. Whereas most people, they want an easy life. They don't want to have to think too much. They don't want the pressure. They don't want the stress. They just want to have a steady income, pay their bills, go home, watch TV or look at the internet for 3 hours, go to sleep, and wake up and do the same thing.
Yeah. Don't want to think. That is so easy to do, especially with AI. But actually, it can be used for a good thing. Like, whatever that the output that the AI give to you, you can actually elaborate it. You can actually debate against it. That's where your thinking comes in. Be creative with it and change things a bit. If you follow it 100%, if you follow it 100%, meaning that you are not using whatever that's been given to you. Your brain, your intuition, your morality, your experiences in life so far, it should help you to make decision, right? But if you still rely on AI, then that is something that is not right.
That might be thinking about that, that might be a real differentiating factor for humanity in the future. Whereas those who choose to use AI as the tool to make things better, and those who end up becoming the tool for AI, if you rely on it too much, it's going to be a big problem.
Yes. So basically, if you know what you want from AI, it's good. If you do not know what you want from AI and you let the AI dictates whatever that you want to do, whatever that you want to decide, then the quality of life would be much less than the previous person that I was talking about. So,
at least your quality of free will. I mean, I think in some cases this might not be a bad thing, because there are a lot of people in power who look, the human instinct is greed and power, and especially in politics, right? And that's globally across the board, right? Whereas AI won't have any of that. If it made decisions purely from a logical basis on what's good for the society in which it's governing, or at least for it to become just some sort of an advisor in that sense, it would be nice to have that in some sort of a public forum. Whereas AI, there's like, okay, so I've done some of these thought challenges, right? Like, how could AI run a government, or how could we live ultimately in the future, right? Humans are always going to want to have the illusion of power. over AI, right? So imagine a society where there are small communities that are run democratically by the people that live within those communities, right? So let's say from on a state basis, okay, or even smaller, and then those individual communities have an AI that connects on a broader spectrum to other communities, and they govern the interaction between the communities so that there's no conflicts in terms of like trade.
Yeah.
We're talking way down the line, right? So that way the humans have control of their immediate environment, whatever they can actually control, right? How they live, how their roads look, their sewage, their waste, all that stuff can be controlled by what by people, by democratic society. But then the trade between their community and another community, or on a larger scale, that can be dictated by AI. Because once you start making decisions for people that live 100 miles away, that's when it can be controversial, right?
Yes.
So imagine this. Then all of a sudden what you start getting is these people that are in these same echo chambers online, they start getting together in a community in the physical world. So now all of a sudden you've got these echo chamber communities. That could be interesting as long as it's governed between AI and it remains civil, it could be good. But if somehow, then it could be dangerous. Then it would break humanity up, not only online but also physically. It could break us up, right? Because like if you start developing real estate developments only for people who think alike, then you're just dividing.
If the logic is similarity is good, and differences is bad, that's how that happens. Because everything builds on logic, especially AI is a bunch of language,
right,
if I'm not mistaken. So it's based on, it's actually 0, 1, right? 0 or 1. So there's a logic that dictates their decision, whatever outputs that they are giving. We as a society are providing them information for those input, and we prefer similarity. So echo chambers that you mentioned just now, I feel like we are feeding into that. Because just like how we are feeding ourselves with whatever content that we like, right? So that's how it begins. That's the logic behind whatever that AI is doing at the moment, I feel like.
Well, it is essentially a mirror of society. It's us.
Yeah.
It's us, because we are the internet. It's a collective. The internet's essentially the collective consciousness of humanity. Okay, so now, getting back a little bit more towards your area of expertise, are you using AI in any way to help with the with any of your research, or are you coming up with ways for AI to bring solutions to these emerging economies and to these entrepreneurs in emerging economies?
Okay, I like that question because it forces me to be honest. Because I do use AI. I benefit from AI. I try not to rely on it so much. What do I do with AI? Sometimes I like to get ideas. Some people ask, what do I like to have for lunch? You can actually get ideas on what is the new and current trend in whatever topic that you are working on right now. And you take that, I take that, and then do my own research, do my own work based on that. Again, it's so easy to, they give a bunch of topics, a list of topics, and what about number 2 that I should research on? That is brain rot, if I'm not mistaken. But I had to discipline myself because it's just too easy to ask AI so many things and to ask them to do the thinking for you. But I use AI to give me ideas, to give some perspective. Maybe I look into this topic in this way, in this perspective. They look at it, this perspective, I haven't seen it yet. So I do more research on it. So that's how I use AI for. I try not to rely on it so much. It is useful. I'd be stupid not to use it. but I do use it.
But do you think that it can benefit these emerging economies, these emerging economies, particularly the people that are, I don't want to say being left behind, but the people that are still coming up within these emerging economies? How do you think that they can utilize it to help propel themselves from lower income to middle income to eventually maybe higher income with the second generation or perhaps with
Okay, so the question is how people can use AI to benefit themselves to actually be better.
Yeah.
Especially people in the disadvantaged community.
Correct, and particularly with the people that you've studied, like
Yeah.
with the people that you've studied, have you seen any of them using it, or are they not there yet?
An issue is, I feel like they would want to use AI, but the reach is not there yet.
Okay.
And I was talking with farmers. Farmers, they work with their hands a lot. They prefer that. That's why they are working with soil and not in the office crunching numbers. But I feel like they can have their kids help them with it. For example, in farming or in agriculture, choosing good seeds for their cultivation. Which one should they choose and what are the criteria? So they can use that to get further information on that, to help them study more in whatever produce that they are cultivating. I feel like they can use that because it's just too easy for people from any agency and to sell them. Okay, buy these seeds. These seeds are good. This seed comes from Taiwan or Netherlands. Buy from me. So it's just easy for them to get cheated on, and then and they also can use AI to do cross-checking, cross-referencing, get more information on it. So they can debate with these people. So they can benefit from it. Unfortunately, I feel like the reach is not there yet.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like sometimes I think that even I'm in my own bubble when talking about AI because I don't think everybody's utilizing it the same, to the extent, because it does make you a lot more productive. But like in their case, you could say, okay, you could type into the AI, okay, I have a 10-acre piece of land in this tropical climate. Which agricultural product can I plant to most monetize this amount of land and how much? And that way at least they can get a step ahead on their neighbors. But do they have the connectivity to actually be able to even have access to it?
Most of them don't.
They don't.
Most of them don't. And with regards to producing, they can use AI, but what they are looking for, I feel like, is how to use technology to produce more and better products, better crops. And if I don't know how AI can do this, but how to make sure that their farm is safe from thieves, to make sure that their crops are free from fungus, pesticides. That is what they are most interested.
Right.
That is with regards to the produce, and also on the market itself, because agriculture is actually quite competitive, and because it's an industry that has been going on for such a long time, there are very, very large competitors out there, conglomerates that are doing agriculture. Smaller farmers are competing against the bigger guys. So I am not sure how AI can help them with that.
Well, I have a question. The research that you conduct,
Yeah.
right, and you perform, where does it go? Does it go? Do you submit it to people in power who may be able to use it so that they can make informed decisions in the future? How does the flow work here in Malaysia with the university process and the researching, and then, so that it can get to our leaders who can make informed decisions?
Okay. So this question is about what do academicians do with their research?
Yeah, what's the flow of information like?
Yes. Ideally, the research that we do should benefit the community that we are focused on through our dialogue with the government and also the society in general, because these three are interconnected. But universities and education is an industry on its own. They have their own KPI, and most of the time, this dialogue is being there's a gap there. Yeah, but for sciences, they are producing a lot of pattern, a lot of technology. But ideally, it should benefit the community. It should be able to be a voice to the government so they can make policy changes. Based on my experience at least, we are almost there, but not there yet. Because whatever the work that I've done on immigrant entrepreneurs, whatever troubles that they have, whatever challenges that they have, when I learn about them, when I listen to all of their experiences, you feel like they shouldn't have experienced whatever that they just experienced. You want to be able to change that.
Can you share some of those stories with us?
Some of this will be edited, right?
If you want it to be edited.
Yeah,
do you want it to be edited? If you don't want to share it, you don't have to.
Well, some are forced to give grease money. So this is quite I'm quite embarrassed to learn about that.
We had to do it too. I had to do it too.
Yeah, so this will be off the record, but yeah, grease money and whatever the challenges that they have. Yeah, so you want to be able to voice out their challenges, whatever the difficulties that they experience, to the people in power, because that is part of their job as well, right? My job is to produce research outputs, not to change the policy. But if I can change the policy, that's good. But
are you on any think tanks or any committees or anything like that can help advise some of these people?
If I am, then that would be good. But I'm not, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, you would think, because obviously, like, the ministers aren't going to have time to read through this stuff, but you would think that they have aides and people working in their office who should be constantly fed these kind of research, whatever the research is that falls under their ministry, right? Like, they should have a team of people then who can then advise the minister on the latest research that has been done by the Malaysian universities. That way you have a full circle of information flow from the people on the ground to the university professors to the government aides, then to the ministers, then to the policy.
Well, ideally, it should be like that. That's why education institutions are being set up in a specific place that they are being set up in to benefit the local society, and then people have different interests. They should be able to contribute to their communities of interest. So ideally, that's how it is. But so far, I see improvement, like especially with the entrepreneurs that I've talked to along the years. I see improvements. I see their business growing. Some business close, but they open a new one. So that's an evolution there, which is good. So,
did you notice any patterns within your research as to what separated a successful immigrant entrepreneur from an unsuccessful one?
I think you can relate with this. In my definition, successful is to be able to survive for a long time, or maybe to have a specific project that you have a goal. For instance, with your restaurant, you have a goal of selling it, for example. So you achieve that goal. So that is considered success in the entrepreneurship context. What differentiates successful entrepreneurs and not so successful one is the not so successful ones, they are, especially for immigrant entrepreneurs, they are here not to do business. They are here because doing something else. They are here for their children's education, or maybe there's nothing that they can do. They cannot work. They cannot. Maybe their certificate is not recognized in this country. For you just mentioned the differences between an employee or an entrepreneur, right? So they aren't able to bring themselves up as an entrepreneur, so they are still in the employee mentality. So usually their business 2-3 years close. So they accumulate a lot of debts. Eventually they went back to their home country, but they achieve their goal, which is having their children get some education in Malaysia or whatever goal that they have here. The successful ones are here because they see an opportunity, they grab that opportunity, they make sure that they materialize that opportunity. So I can give you a story about this one Korean entrepreneur that I feel like quite successful. So he's been here since 1995. Started he's Korean. He started as a salesman for car parts industry in Korea at that time is booming, and Malaysia is also developing at the time. So there's a demand, there's an appetite for cars. Somehow 1997 Asian financial crisis happened, and nobody's buying cars in financial crisis, right? You want to survive. So he saw an opportunity of everybody needs food. People eat food every day. That is such a logical statement, but he looked at it from an entrepreneurial sense entrepreneurial sense.
It's recession proof.
People need to eat. So he has access. He uses his Korean identity to import food from Korea to sell to Malaysia, import food from Malaysia to sell to Korea. He looked into what kind of similarity that Malaysia and Korea have in terms of taste, ramen, spicy food. That is quite similar. So he took advantage of that. And a few years later, he learned about halal. And he learned that, okay, for me to further expand in the food industry, especially in Malaysia, I have to have halal certification. And actually, there are a lot of Muslims in the world. So that's a market itself. Like, that's such a large market. So he went back to Korea, proposed the concept of halal to the Korean government. And with him in the committee, he developed the introduction of halal in Korea is one of the people who started it is him. So it's already an industry of its own. So right now, now it's 2025. So a restaurant, supermarket, a logistic facility for food, a warehouse. So not just a business between Malaysia and Korea, Southeast Asia and Korea as well. Now expanding to Latin America for some reason. So the risk for appetite, and I feel like I could see you can even see the drive to grab an opportunity. If I don't take this, somebody else will. Greed, but in a good sense. Ambition, yeah. A large part of it is capitalism, wanting to have more, but that is from what I see, especially at least, that differentiates good entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, and what entrepreneurs who don't seem to make it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense that a higher percentage of immigrants would do well as entrepreneurs because they're coming to the country with a goal set in mind. Whereas I feel like a lot of people within the country themselves may take it for granted. You know,
I
I have a
can
great
take it for granted.
I have a great example of that. A great example is when I first came to Malaysia, I traveled all around Malaysia. I went to every single state in the country, right? And I would talk to Malaysians who lived here their whole life. They'd be like, wow, you've been to more of Malaysia than I have, right? And then I would speak to Malaysians who went to the university in America, and they'd say, oh, when I was in America, I went here, I went over here. I said, wow, you've been to more places in America than I have, right? Because inherently you take what you have for granted initially. If you don't value that, it's kind of like a facade. You don't realize it, right? You have to see through that and value what you have. So yeah, I could see how like a high percentage of immigrants would be more successful as entrepreneurs because of that. They come for a purpose and they see the value already. They already see the value.
Mike, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, good.
Okay.
We can wrap it up then.
Yeah.
We can wrap it up. Really good talking with you though. I think it was a great conversation. I mean, we did like, 2 hours.
2 hours, was it?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I think almost 2 hours. Yeah. What time did you come? You came in? Yeah.
Yeah. 11, right? 11,
Yeah.
11, yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for coming by. We'll edit it and we'll figure out how we, how Ruth will edit it, cut it out. We'll send it to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike, for having me. Very good to be. I think we've talked about entrepreneurship, we talked about culture, we talked about AI at one point, and then we talk about experiences in Malaysia as foreigners. So I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. You do some updating on your research. Come back and chat it up again.
Oh yes, I will. A lot of good ideas that I have at the moment. Yes.
Good, exciting stuff. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we shake hands? I don't know.